Let's get to Sheriff David Clarke. He's live in Milwaukee. Hey, Sheriff, great to have you. Sorry for the delay, sir.
Oh, not a problem. Party politics. You got to love it.
Sheriff, what is going on in Wisconsin? The last we heard, the judge knocked the whole thing down. Everything Evers did. Everybody can open. Immediately, taverns opened. There were no restrictions. What's going on now? What has happened there?
Yeah, right now we're getting back to some sort of normalcy, at least the way it was before this COVID-19 virus struck. The governor did huddle with his people and tried to create a way to circumvent the decision of the state Supreme Court. And after about 48 hours, he dropped it. So he's done. He's not pushing this anymore. I think, are 3 counties who are using their local ordinances to stay as a lockdown.
Do they have the authority to do that?
Well, that's a good question because a number of counties did it at first when the Supreme Court came out with their decision, and then their Corporation Council, their lawyers, took a look at it and said, this will never pass a lawsuit. The state Supreme decision was clear, and so most of them opened up. Just the 3, Milwaukee, Racine, and Dane County, all Democrat strongholds, by the way, remain that way. But other than that, it's pretty much open for business again.
If I go to Wisconsin now, except for these 3 counties, is there any restrictions at all on anything?
Yeah, there's they're using many places in these guidelines. You got to wear a mask. I mean, restaurants can't do that, or it becomes very difficult. Taverns can't do it, but retail shops and whatnot are, and they're using these social distancing. And got little X's on the floor that you got to stand on when you're at the register. All that nonsense, and it is nonsense. It's not based on any science. But other than that, like I said, many bars, taverns, there's no mask, no shelter in place. I mean, no social separation. I call it, not distancing.
So how do they, except for those 3 counties? How do they mandate social distancing, step on a square, masks? How do they do that without the order in place?
Well, many of these business establishments, they're afraid, and they're afraid of lawsuits, and that's why I've implored the Wisconsin legislature, which is controlled by the Republicans, to put some sort of protections from, tort lawyers
right.
for these businesses, and just make a high degree to say, you can't sue them for coronavirus unless it's a high degree of recklessness, which is a very high standard. But, they're moving slow on that. So, you got business owners who are afraid. They're the vulture tort lawyers who are just, right now just, rubbing their hands, just can't wait to get at this thing. And, that'll be in the next phase, all these lawsuits. But, we'll get through that as well. At some point, people are just, we're human beings. We're products of our environment, and we're wired a certain way. We're conditioned, and the way they're asking us to live now is not the way we live. It's not the way we want to live. We now know more about this virus than we did before. Many of the scare tactics have kind of worn off, and although it is a serious virus, first of all, I don't believe any of the death numbers anyway. None of them. They're garbage in, garbage out. But the fact is that this thing is no more lethal than seasonal flu, and we don't do that during the seasonal flu. And there are some who think that we should, and I say, don't give them any ideas. So eventually we'll go back because we're conditioned, right? We're creatures of habit. We'll go back to what we like, not just what we're used to. What we like. We like the lifestyle we had, and we want to return to it.
Right. Sheriff David Clarke, he's America's Sheriff. You can follow him, americasheriff.com. He's also senior advisor to webuildthewall.us. Sheriff Clarke, so basically what you're saying is a lot of businesses in Wisconsin, although there's no order, got struck down, they're practicing these things like 6 feet apart, masks, on their own. So they're making their own decision to do that as they're open because they don't want to be part of any negative litigation. So they're making these decisions on their own. I just saw Purdue University They're in Indiana, but I just saw Mitch Daniels, the former governor there, said that they're opening up Purdue, and he had this long letter as to why. Wisconsin University, are they opening up? What's happening there?
No word on that, but that's the biggest thing that needs to happen, and that's what the Republican-controlled legislature has to push. They don't really have a plan, and what I mean by a plan is a strategy to fully open the state. I think the next step is they have to open the schools. They have to get the schools open, and the way they can do that with public schools, whether it be the universities, high schools, or the middle schools and grammar schools, is to tell them no funding if you don't open up. The hell with this virtual schooling, the hell with this Zoom stuff. It's not working in these large centers anyway. And so they have to open up the schools. The churches are starting to open because the order was struck down. So we got that going. And then the next thing that has to happen, and I think the reason why these three things have to happen, John, is because it gives people a sense of confidence that things are returning back to the way they were, is, open the schools, open the churches, and then return to sporting events with fans. Okay, I'll let the leagues and whatnot determine how to make that happen, but we have to do this as well. But as long as you have these crazy guidelines in place of social distancing, you can't have a sporting event like a football game or a basketball game with social distancing, for heaven's sakes. I mean, that stuff is absurd. Yeah, so, those three things, and I think if the GOP legislature here pushes that, give people a sense that things are back and they'll have more confidence. And I'll tell you the biggest fear I have right now, though, John, is you're already hearing the Democrats and the left and the liberals talk about if there's a surge in the fall that we may have to do this again. And the answer has to be absolutely not. And I heard the president say that the other day. President Trump said, there is a surge and there may be. We will not be shutting down. You cannot do that. We know more about this now than we did the first time. And we were bamboozled the first time anyway. As you recall, They told us 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into months. And the next thing you know, the whole economic engine collapsed. So, if there's a surge again, we know more. Take precautions. You hit the hot spots. We know our hospital system can handle it. We now have medical supplies to deal with it. We cannot let them shut this thing in the fall if there's a surge.
I agree with you. We have to get back to school, and this thing, and I tell you the other thing. They keep saying, "Oh, there could be a surge in the fall." Define a surge. Give me a single number for that. Give me a single metric. Like, what's a surge, right? Nobody will define it because if they leave a surge undefined, Sheriff, it's whatever they say it is.
Exactly. Right? And yeah, and that's the way they work. All these terms they used that we're still using today that we have to stop using. They have no definition. When they talk about essential versus non-essential, there's a big one. What is the definition of that? There never was one.
Right. Well, it's whatever's going to give money to the Democrats is essential, and whatever's going to give money to Trump is not essential. So Trump's base is small business owners. That's the core and the heart and soul of his base. That's the deplorable base. Well, if they get assassinated business-wise, so what, right? Get rid of them. Walmart, meantime, gives millions of dollars to the Dems, and so does Family Dollar and all the other big companies. I want to get to Governor Whitmer, Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, her husband. The gig is up with him. What did he do over the weekend? There's a social media outrage. What did he do?
Yeah, he called up the place where he docks, stores his boat for the winter. And he told them to put it in the water because they were getting ready to do a little shindig for the Memorial Day weekend. And while his wife, Gretchen Whitmer, has the state still under house arrest. She probably has the strictest terms right now going on in America, and she is relentless about this. She still has her boot on the neck of Michiganders. I've been working with groups there. I went there for one of their protests. I'm still working with groups on the side to keep the pressure on her. The only thing that's going to make her take her boot off the neck of the people of Michigan, the great people of Michigan, to keep her feet to the fire, to twist her arm. So you have to turn this into a negative PR campaign for her. Social media, told them to keep up the protests and just keep the pressure on, relentless. What she's trying to do is help the Democrat Party nationally because Michigan is going to be a key state. And if you think about it, when she keeps these orders down, these orders in place, the businesses are hurting, the businesses are suffering, people aren't making money. The unemployment rate is high. By the way, in Wisconsin, it got to 14%. 675,000 people filed for unemployment just in the state of Wisconsin. And so that's why they were trying to do it in Wisconsin. Tony Evers, the governor here, was trying to help out as well. And, people talk about she has visions of maybe being a VP candidate. That'll never happen. She doesn't check enough boxes for the Democrats. So, they're still suffering. They're still hurting. But, I told them you got to play the long game here. Make it ugly for her. And that story about them putting their boat in the water, these are wealthy people, they're Whitmers. And good for them. They earned their money. They didn't steal it. But at the same time, it's a typical Democrat stance of do as I say, not as I do.
All right, so basically Governor Whitmer, Gretchen Whitmer, has everybody still in a stay-at-home order, right, in Michigan, right? You can't go visit your house at the lake. You can't go visit a neighbor, right? She's still got that going on. But yet the husband calls up and says, put the boat in the water so they can go out on their boat on the holiday weekend. Good for them, but there's two sets of rules now.
Oh, there's always been that for the elitist Democrats and elitist liberals. There's always been
right. So as far as she's concerned, everybody has to stay home except her. She does not.
Yeah, and maybe a few of her friends, because of course they're going to want to get together with some of their friends. But even under her lockdown order, you can't even go to a relative's house. So in other words, you couldn't go to your brother's or sister's house, to visit them, because you have to live in that household in order to be there. That's how strict her lockdown is.
Unbelievable. How do these people stay in power? Why isn't there a recall going on there?
It's being talked about. I one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Get her to lift this damn order first, because they were uttering that word here in Wisconsin, recall, with Governor Tony Evers if he didn't stop. Fortunately, the state Supreme Court stepped in. She's attacking this barber in Michigan. His last name is Mankey, and he won a court battle last week. She tried to get a temporary restraining order in place to keep him from cutting hair in his barber shop, and a judge would not allow it. So you take those little victories like that. I don't know what their state Supreme Court's going to do. The Republican legislature in Michigan, they control the legislature. She's a Democrat, but they sued her, and over this order, and that's still working its way through the courts. And that's why I remind people, you got to play the long game first. Let's practice some patience first. Patience meaning utilize the institutions in place. But if those institutions start to fail you, like the courts, then I think it's civil disobedience is in order.
Civil disobedience. Sometimes you have to do that in order to get your point across, or you just have to go on with your life. I mean, if civil disobedience means I go out without a mask on, I'm going to go out without a mask on. I guess I'm doing civil disobedience, although it's unconstitutional to make me wear something I don't want to wear. So I'm like an anti-masker, and I get all kinds of abuse over it. But personally, Sheriff, I don't think they do anything, and I don't think they're healthy. So I'm an anti-masker.
No, I'm with you. I've read several studies on that from doctors and scientists, and there's just as many. See, there's no consensus in the medical field, even though the Fauci's of the world and the Democrats and the liberals might want you to think that there is, that all these doctors say this. Well, there's all these doctors that say the opposite, and they give their reasons why. And they've convinced me enough that I'll go with their advice, and they're saying these masks are not necessary, and also that these masks will do very little to reduce the risk of catching coronavirus. So some of them have said, makes people makes them feel good. It gives them a false sense of security. So what? And that's what I say too. So what? If you want to wear the mask, fine. Wear the mask. It makes you feel good, good. But leave me alone. Don't impose your draconian measures on me because you think that I should behave the way that you do. I'll behave the way that I want to.
All right, that's going to be it. I want to thank Sheriff David Clarke for being with us. Hey, Sheriff, always great to have you, man.
My pleasure. Be well.